I didn't take the elevator. I wanted the full walk through the long glass corridor with the faint humming of the servers beneath the floor. Past the framed poster about future-ready thinking, still curling at the edges. Past the intern whose eyes flicked away when he saw me. Maybe he already knew. Maybe no one told him I was still around. My office door was open. Not empty open. My name was still etched on the glass Celeste Whitmore, systems architect. The badge I'd worn for 25 years still dangled from the corner of the monitor like it was waiting for me. But in my chair, legs crossed and laptop open, sat Amberly Voss, 24, marketing background, 3 viral explainer videos, hired for culture synergy. Her chair was swiveled halfway toward the window, ring light clipped to the frame. A little pink diffuser was puffing out something that smelled like vanilla and bleach. She didn't see me at first. She was squinting at her screen, and then I saw it clear as day. Her browser window was open to a search tab. How to run a batch file Windows CMD. It was the kind of search a college freshman makes when they've just been told to automate a script, but don't know what command line means. I watched her type something else. Something wrong. I stepped 1 foot into the room. She glanced up. Her lips parted like she'd been caught stealing. Oh, hi. I didn't know if anyone was using this. They told me this desk was open. It is now, I said quietly. I walked to the desk, reached for the badge, and unclipped it without a sound. She was still half smiling, unsure if she should stand. I didn't ask for a handshake. I didn't ask what she knew. I just peeled a yellow Post-it from the edge of the monitor and stuck the badge right over the tab she had open. It covered the search bar completely. Good luck, I said. Then I turned, stepped back into the hallway, and didn't look back. The walls hummed again, quieter this time. Maybe it was just me hearing what they'd tuned out. And the thing about batch files, you don't notice them until they stop running. The term he used was rotational modernization. Bryce Norwood stood at the far end of the conference table, collar unbuttoned just enough to look like he hadn't tried, sleeves rolled to the elbows. He was 32, maybe 33, and carried the kind of confidence that only comes from being the CEO's son and never being told no. We're not laying anyone off, he said to the board. We're evolving. Legacy systems need legacy exits. A few chuckled. I didn't. I was 3 seats down, already knowing what was coming. Bryce was the kind of leader who loved metrics as long as they were colorful and made for good PowerPoint transitions. He used words like agile uplift and culture forward with the enthusiasm of someone who'd skimmed a book on organizational theory during a layover in Denver. But he didn't know the system, not the one I built. He didn't know about the time the vendor API collapsed in Q2 and we rerouted a decade of client data through a virtual patchwork I coded in 12 hours. He didn't know about the time we migrated 4 million records during a ransomware scare because our off-site tapes hadn't been refreshed. He didn't know because he'd never asked. Celeste Whitmore has done outstanding work here, he said, looking at his slides. Not at me, but we need to move toward digital fluency, forward operability, energy alignment. I wasn't even angry. A week later, Michelle, his mother, and the CEO called me into her office. She said my role was being sunset to make room for fresh innovation. I didn't ask for clarification. I'd already read between the lines before the envelope slid across the table. 3 months of severance, no transition period, no knowledge transfer. I left the building without a single email sent, without a message in the group chat, without clearing my inbox. They didn't want continuity. They wanted a clean break. They thought removing the code's author would make the code easier to manage. They thought wrong. By the time I reached the parking lot, Amberly's welcome post had already gone live on the company's LinkedIn page. The first tag came while I was halfway through my second coffee at Dandelion Bean, a quiet spot 2 blocks from Bravura's campus, where the Wi-Fi was bad and the silence was good. I didn't check my phone immediately. I never rushed anymore. But the second tag buzzed before the first faded, then a third. I opened the app. Amber Lee Voss, now Tech Girly E24 online, had posted a day one recap. Bright lighting, glossy skin filter, fake shocked face. POV when your new job has a dashboard from 1997. The camera panned to her screen, just for a second. But it was enough, in that blink. She'd caught an internal operations panel one I'd personally designed, a tool never meant to be external, one that still displayed live data fields and access roles. The comment section was already lighting up. Is that Bravura's actual UI girl just leaked a live system? LOL, oh no, that looks custom coded and expensive. Someone had paused the frame and circled the system IP in red. Others were stitching reactions, mocking the prehistoric look of the UI, not knowing it had survived 12 market contractions and 2 ransomware attempts. Bravura's IT team scrambled. I knew it before anyone told me. I could picture the exact moment the CISO's assistant flagged the post, the call that followed, the quiet order to pull it down too late. Of course, the video was already on Reddit, then LinkedIn, then Twitter. I didn't comment, didn't share. I just sipped my coffee and watched the retweets rise. A former QA lead messaged me privately, "Is that your panel she just clowned?" I replied with one word, "Yep." Then I muted the thread. Because what Amber Lee didn't know, and what Bryce clearly never considered, was that interface had layers, hidden logics, silent scripts that made the data flow without needing to shout about it. And if someone didn't know what they were looking at, they'd never realize what else was running underneath, especially if they thought legacy just meant old. By nightfall, I'd made a new folder on my desktop. I labeled it Windfall. The invite came through Proton Mail. No subject line, just a single sentence, "Check your Slack." If you remember the phrase, batch skip parity, you're one of us. I clicked the link. The workspace was called Continuum. 43 members. No company logos. No job titles. Just aliases like Echo Root, Null Unit, and Nessa QA. All names I recognize not from promotions or press releases, but from commit logs and system rollback chains. They weren't bitter. They were documenting. There were pinned threads titled, "Patch Gaps Bryce Doesn't Know Exist," and Amber Lee Live Edits flagged. Each thread had receipts, time-stamped logs, screenshots, even audio snippets. One chart tracked missing entries in Bravura's incident log. Another tracked every core engineer removed in the past 18 months, all labeled rotational. Someone named Colonel Kid pinged me privately. "Hey, I was your intern during the Q3 crash recovery. You taught me how to validate hash integrity with grep. Hope it's okay I flagged you in." I remembered him. His real name was Wyatt. Sharp Kid. He sent over a log file Amber Lee's session from the previous Friday. She tried to edit a permissions queue manually, had clicked into an admin route she didn't understand. In doing so, she'd bypassed the silent failsafe I coded into the back end, the one that rerouted traffic if malformed queries hit production-level accounts. Her action had disabled it. Wyatt's note was short. She broke the parachute. I didn't reply, just saved the log to Windfall. Then I clicked into a folder labeled Ghost Loaders. Inside were timelines marked with when each of us left, and what failures followed. Not speculation, logs. One thread noted, "The new DevOps lead doesn't know which servers still run Celeste's shell scripts. They haven't been touched, but they're still running." I sat back and let the screen go dark. They thought removing us meant the end of our influence. But all they did was turn off the lights in a room we still had the keys to, and rooms like that remember everything. The next file I opened was a slide deck one Bryce had presented to the board 2 weeks before I left. The deck was exactly what I expected, full of empty vision statements and animated transitions. Bryce thought looked executive. But slide 27 hit differently. Reduce tech debt by removing legacy personnel. Streamline cultural velocity. Prioritize adaptive optics over static expertise. He hadn't just buried the insult, he'd printed it in bold. The phrasing wasn't careless. It was the strategy. I knew the board had clapped when he said it. I could almost hear them. I saved only that slide, scrubbed the metadata, removed any names. Then I sent it to someone I hadn't spoken to in 6 years, Elliot Tran, a cynical, underfunded tech journalist who once called Bravura's disaster recovery process a house made of Band-Aids. He never burned his sources. He didn't need much context. I just attached the slide with a short note. Ever wonder what modernization really means? 2 days later, the headline went live, reducing tech debt by removing humans. The Bravura playbook. It wasn't front-page news, but it was enough. The piece got picked up by a niche industry blog, then reshared on LinkedIn by a former CISO, then screenshot by a vendor I used to work with. A few hours later, Haldenet, our API encryption partner, quietly paused a major integration scheduled that quarter. They released a vague statement citing alignment concerns, but we all knew what it meant. Bravura issued a response. Polished. Unapologetic. They called it a misrepresentation of internal strategy documents not intended for external review. Michelle posted a note on the company blog calling the leak unfortunate and the current issues typical of transformation-era growing pains. No names were named, no one apologized, but inside Continuum, we saw the impact. One thread. Bryce pulled 2 engineers from onboarding to rewrite our staging deployment docs. No one can find the original files. Another client asked for a rollback log. We never made one. They'd removed the people who remembered how the system was stitched together. Now they were discovering the seams too late, and on Friday morning, Amber Lee pushed a migration script with a single comment. Let's make it pretty. I was slicing pears in my kitchen when my phone buzzed once, then again, then a third time in rapid succession. I didn't need to check who it was. I just wiped my hands, opened Continuum, and saw the message pinned in bold red crash confirmed. 10:41 a.m. Migration triggered. No shadow copy detected. Admin console frozen. 503 errors across all nodes. I scrolled down. 12 months of data corrupted. Backup pipeline wasn't tested. Amber Lee's credentials show as last action before failure. Bryce logged off Slack at 10:46. Never came back. There were screenshots of the dashboard red everywhere. Load balancers overwhelmed. Distribution tables flattened. One log read like a death sentence system, root to ops archive missing from path. That archive was the spine. It contained every routing rule we'd layered over the years, every exception protocol we'd written when vendors failed or spikes broke throughput. It wasn't just a folder, it was memory. And now, it was gone. Someone dropped a screen cap from Bravura's internal Slack Michelle. We're addressing a brief infrastructure hiccup. Appreciate your patience during this transitional phase. Hiccup. I closed my laptop. Sat very still. They'd built a new platform on a foundation they didn't understand, painted over the cracks, told the world it was progress. But systems don't run on optimism. They run on logic. Tested, retested, adjusted over time. They didn't believe in that. They believed in buzzwords and dashboards and clean PR. And now everything was red. Another message arrived from Wyatt. They're blaming the software, but they broke the process. I didn't respond. I just opened my Windfall folder and added a new screenshot, labeled it Root Failure, No Recovery. Then I grabbed my jacket and headed to the hardware store. I needed to walk, to stand in a place where wires still meant something, where precision wasn't optional, and where no one asked if a system was pretty. I walked past a shelf of unused SATA drives and smiled. They hadn't just removed the engine. They'd handed the keys to someone who didn't know what a clutch was. The call came just after 8:00 m. No caller ID, just a quiet buzz that broke the stillness of my morning. I let it ring twice. Then I picked up. "Celeste," she said, her voice polished, measured like she was trying not to sound like she'd been up all night. "It's Michelle." I waited. "I hope this isn't a bad time." "It's fine." I was stirring honey into tea. Calm movements, quiet countertop. I wanted to reach out personally. She paused. "We're navigating a few temporary challenges." I didn't say anything. "We were wondering," she continued, "if you'd consider coming back, not permanently, of course. Just a short-term consult, infrastructure stabilization, knowledge recovery. You built so much of our foundation. She caught herself. "We'd really value your guidance right now." My thumb brushed the edge of the mug. "Michelle," I said gently, "if you didn't value it when it was holding you up, you can't afford it now." Silence. "This isn't about ego," she said finally. "You know that." "Right, it never was," I replied. Another pause. Longer this time. "We'd compensate you generously." I could hear the strain in her voice. She was trying to keep it professional, trying not to let desperation bleed through, but it was there in the clipped syllables, in the too careful tone. "I'm sure you would," I said, "but I'm not available." She didn't argue, didn't ask again, just let out a quiet breath. "Well," she said softly, "if you reconsider, I won't." I ended the call. No gloating, no satisfaction, just stillness. Later that afternoon, a ping from Continuum lit up my screen. "Amberly has been suspended. Internal audit triggered. Legal and HR reviewing 2 formal complaints." I didn't ask from who. I didn't need to. They'd handed the controls to someone who couldn't fly. Now they were blaming the altitude. I took another sip of tea and opened a new email, this one from a name I hadn't seen in over a decade. Marcus Hale, CTO, Halden Systems, subject line, coffee. We met at a quiet cafe in Palo Alto, far from the polished glass towers and branded innovation labs. Marcus Hale looked older than I remembered, less cocky, more deliberate, but his eyes still carried that same quick spark. "I've been watching from the sidelines," he said, sipping something with oat milk and too many syllables. "What happened to bravura? That wasn't just carelessness. It was ideology without understanding." I nodded. I didn't need an apology, and he didn't offer one. What mattered was the folder he slid across the table. Inside a proposal, Halden Systems, logistics tech, lean, funded, stable, modular rebuild. He explained. Foundational logic, not just fast rollouts. We don't want flash, we want function. And we need someone who can see the architecture before the UI. I read the specs. Clean, focused, measured. Then I looked at him. "I have one condition." I said, 3. "Actually." His brow lifted. I listed the names. Zephyr Lee, QA analyst. Let go when Bravura bought into machine-learned test cycling that never understood user flow. Riva Sanborn, billing architect. Called redundant by Bryce after suggesting the finance API needed a hard rewrite. Omar Travers, firewall specialist. Replaced by a consultant who made a pretty PowerPoint and nearly deleted half our port permissions during a demo. Marcus didn't flinch. "Good," he said. "That's exactly who we want." A week later, we were onboarding in a borrowed co-working space with cheap desks, great Wi-Fi, and no slogans taped to the walls. Zephyr brought his own testing framework. Riva had already diagrammed the new billing logic before her badge activated. Omar had a fresh routing plan in place. By day 2, we didn't make welcome videos. No one posted ring light selfies. No one said synergy. We just worked quietly, intentionally, like we had something to rebuild and nothing to prove. By Friday, our first integration test ran clean, no errors, no skips, no rollback. Marcus sent a short email, Phase 1 green. Board approved. Phase 2. I forwarded it to Zephyr, Riva, and Omar with one word, ready. And then I opened a new document and began mapping the logic for something better than recovery. 3 weeks in, and we didn't need a ribbon cutting or a product launch party. We had a dashboard, and the bar was green, always green. No red spikes, no memory leaks, no last-minute code scrambles, just a stable system humming quietly, the way it should have always been. Riva's billing pipeline ran clean across all test environments. Omar's security layer had survived 2 white hat probes without a dent. Zephyr's test suite caught an upstream vendor error before it reached production. No one outside the walls of Halden Systems knew our names, but they would know the system. Meanwhile, Bravura was busy with its own quiet unraveling. Bryce's LinkedIn profile went dark. No announcement, no thank you post, just gone. Amberly's social presence vanished too. TikTok, Instagram, even her Threads account. I heard from Wyatt that HR never made a statement. They didn't have to. Michelle's bio changed on the Bravura website the following Monday. Former executive, that was it. No press release, no farewell letter. A screenshot of the change made its way into Continuum. No comments, just a few emojis and a timestamp. I didn't share it. I didn't need to. We had other things to build. One of Halden's integration partners, Norris Freight Systems, sent us a short message after testing our beta deployment. We haven't seen this kind of stability in a decade. Who wrote your framework? I replied simply, Zephyr ran validation, Riva built logic, Omar secured it. They didn't need to hear my name. It wasn't about credit. Because the thing about infrastructure work is that if it's done right, no one notices it. No headlines, no trending hashtags. Just a system that stays standing. They thought relevance was something you could measure in followers. We built something they couldn't measure at all. And when I checked the deployment tracker one last time before logging off, the green bar was still there quiet, strong, unchanged. I turned off the screen and looked around the room. No noise, no applause, just a handful of people who'd once been discarded, now keeping the world quietly running. And in that silence, I finally allowed myself to think about what came next. The round table was quiet, by design. No press, no live stream, no applause lines. Just 15 of us seated in a low-lit conference room on the 9th floor of a hotel that hadn't updated its carpet since 2004. They asked for insights on sustainable modernization, not performative tech theater. I spoke last. No slides, no company logos, just one sentence written at the top of my notepad. We weren't just legacy. We were the architecture. I didn't name Bravura, didn't mention Michelle, Bryce, or Amberly. I didn't need to. I talked about blind spots disguised as innovation, about how removing the people who know where the wires cross doesn't simplify anything. It just ensures that no one will know what to do when something sparks. I closed with the systems that last are built by people who understand that code is not culture. It's care. That was all. I stepped down. Afterward, a senior VP from Kessler Tech pulled me aside. She'd been watching from the back, arms folded, eyes sharp. We need your team, she said. Not just advice. A full infrastructure redesign. Name your terms. I thanked her, then declined. Because the truth was, I already knew what I wanted to build. Not another system. A place. A training space. Tucked inside a converted industrial building in Santa Clara. No branding, no reception desk. Just a room of real machines, real logs, and real people mostly over 40 who'd once been told they were too slow, too stuck, too obsolete. We called it Echo Layer. Our first cohort built their own monitoring tool by the end of week 2. One of them cried when their script passed every stress test. He hadn't touched code since the company merger that ended his career. I didn't lead with speeches. I just brewed coffee and made sure they had power and quiet. I watched the green logs roll across the screens. No errors, no skips. The way systems should run when built by people who've lived through failure and stayed anyway. If they think we're outdated, that's because they've never seen what real architecture looks like.